Oh, push out to the other.
It was very much like day and night, you know. The day before the governor kind of shut everything down, the whole idea of COVID was just like not even a reality. It wasn't real, you know? And then the next day when we came in, it was just like boom, our whole world was flipped upside down. There was really no like infrastructure in place. There wasn't anything in place to deal with any of this in a cohesive way. From a supervisor perspective, I have a team of 6 normally, and then one day I came in and one of my people had to be at home with her daughter because her daughter's school was canceled. And so that sort of took us out. And then I had another person leave for medical reasons, not COVID related, but that sort of set us back too. So my team of 6 was now a team of 4.
Last year at this time, I was scheduled to have a hysterectomy, but because of COVID and the mandate rules dealing with elective surgery, it was put on hold. It was supposed to be in March, but I had to wait. I had to wait 3 months. It was scheduled for June 4th with some elective surgeries were allowed to happen. I scheduled it to go into the hospital, and I was dropped off at the front door by my husband, who was not allowed to go in with me. I had to go in by myself, had the surgery in the morning, on Thursday morning, and was by myself in the hospital with no visitors being allowed in the hospital for 72 hours. I was there along with nurses and the doctors. At first, it was very, very, but I come to find out that on the same floor, it was also the maternity ward. So many babies were being born throughout those couple of days. So what at first wasn't very fun being all alone. It was joyful to hear all the babies crying, and thank goodness for FaceTime and being able to see friends and family and talk to them. But because of COVID, that's something that surgery I definitely will never forget. It was just a very weird and odd experience. was joyful to hear all the babies cry.
Well, the plain dealer, I think we need to talk about specifically because they took full advantage of this coronavirus to lay off virtually everyone that works at the Guild. And those who were left crossed over to something called Cleveland.com. So the Guild is virtually dead at the plain dealer, which means that they have no rights to negotiate for wages or working conditions. And it was so deliberate. This is where I launched my career, as you know, at the plain dealer. And to see what's happening at this newspaper in this time when we need the information the most. And there's still some good reporters working there. It's just that most people don't have the newspaper. They don't subscribe because many that do are older and they like to get their newspaper at their front door, which is a problem as well. We're really going to need to talk about how we can fund local journalism differently.
COVID, I will say COVID affected my life drastically, especially in the basketball part, because it required us to miss a lot of our season. You know, teams aren't used to going in and coming out like that. It's hard for chemistry, hard for us to get going. So for us to have to wait a few, we actually started later than most. So we had to come in and try to win games to get a higher seed for the playoffs. And one of our players got the virus, and it kind of ruined us a little bit. So we had to sit out for about 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, we came back. We had to play Cleveland Heights, and they were a high team. Had been playing for a minute, so they were ready. The chemistry was just higher than ours, but we were able to pull out the win, so that helped us. But I feel maybe if we started a little earlier, we'd probably still be playing right now. Have a better record, better seed. So yeah, COVID messed up my junior year a little bit. In high school, that's one of the best years. So yeah.
Jonathan spent 27 days in the hospital before he died alone. But before he was placed on a ventilator, he wrote a note to his wife, which she read in the hospital after he died. In the note, he wrote what he wanted her to tell their 2 children, who are too young to remember their father. To his 2-year-old son, Braden, who has special needs, he wrote, "Tell him he's my best bud, and I am proud to be his father." To his 4-month-old daughter, Penelope, he wrote, "Tell her she's a princess, and she can have whatever she wants in life." And to his wife, Katie, he thanked her for giving him the best life he could have had. And then he said this: "If you meet someone, don't hold back, because if they love you and the kids like I do, then I love that for you."
The coronavirus has now entered a devastating new phase as the World Health Organization declares it a global pandemic. There are now more than 126,000 cases across more than 100 countries and regions. The latest numbers from Johns Hopkins University ranks the United States 8th in terms of countries with the most confirmed cases. Keep in mind we have a limit on testing. We learned this morning from officials in Florida that a passenger with coronavirus arrived at Palm Beach International Airport from New York's JFK airport last night. Two sources tell NBC News that in a closed-door briefing, the attending physician of Congress told Senate staffers yesterday that he expects 70 million to 150 million people in the U.S. will contract the virus.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're being crushed under a tidal wave of unfathomable numbers. By one count, over 1 million people have contracted the coronavirus worldwide since the start of this outbreak. Tens of thousands have died. Tonight, in a stunning policy reversal, New York City joining California in urging the general public to wear non-medical face coverings to stop the spread of the virus. New York City reaching a critical mass. Paramedics now empowered to make life and death decisions, those once considered unthinkable.
Well, the message from officials right across the United States is that the situation is dire and it is only going to get worse. As you mentioned, the data that we're seeing, Heather, is worse than it was at the peak in the spring. But what was different in the spring is that those cases were happening in one specific geographic area or in a couple of geographic areas like New York City and the East Coast. Right now, this crisis is unfolding right across the country. I wanted to have you take a look at some of this data, including the number of deaths. That is a record. More than 3,000 people died in the United States, according to Johns Hopkins yesterday. And then just look at the hospitalizations, another grim record. Right now, more than 100,000 people are in hospital. And that means, given that that is a record, officials say we will see that death toll go up.
We asked for and received some great questions about COVID from you today. We'll get to those in just a second. First of all, let's take a quick look at the numbers. Set the stage. Now, where we are right now does look better. Remember, from a
Horrific starting point, but things are improving. You see right now, 42 states in green. It means heading in the right direction. Fewer COVID infections now than a week ago. If you look at it this way, the case trend line, follow the red line. 53,000 plus, 53,883 new infections yesterday. That's a high number when you compare it to the beginning or even the summer peak. But once you've been through the quarter of the winter, starting this trend line, starting to trend down now. The 53,000 starting to trend down. One reason for that is masking and social distancing. Another reason is there are vaccines now getting into arms. 70 million distributed to the states, just shy of 53 million actually shots put in arms. So some progress being made here as the Biden administration takes over the vaccine rollout.
It has been organized chaos, to say the least. I have dozens and dozens and dozens of meetings that I have about COVID. Early on in the pandemic, when we were shut down and worked from home, and I was still in sports medicine, that was a very weird and interesting transition, because when you think sports med, you think hands-on, sidelines, giving water, taping ankles, that sort of thing. And suddenly that all became distant and virtual, and that was weird. And then as it transitioned into the AD role, it suddenly was, now you're making the decisions and you have to make the decisions for our athletes and our sports and testing and whatnot. So a lot of the testing for the athletes, like that was me doing light work and whatnot. So it's a lot more stress, but athletics is chaos anyways, so this is just another layer.
You're in school, you're out of school, you're in school, you're out of school. That back and forth that we had really was a challenge for the parents. It's definitely a challenge for the teachers. As for the students, for the most part, it's what they were asked to do, be at home, away from their friends, and stare at a computer screen all day. there are going to be some learning gaps. We know that. One of our concerns from the beginning was the different pacing that was going on. We have virtual teachers ahead of brick and mortar, and brick and mortar teachers ahead of virtual teachers. But as it's gone on, they've gotten better. And at this point, I think they're right up to par with where they should be. To be honest, some kids are just, they've really done a good job at virtual learning. They've taken to it and they've run with it, and those are the kids that we're going to have, well, I think we're going to have a virtual learning option for parents from now on. And these are the kids that are going to take advantage of that, regardless of COVID. Because they've really excelled, and they like working independently. With just the teacher coming in.
I'm delighted to be here and delighted to shine the light on the critical importance of addressing our mental health. So as we all know, we're coming off of a year of trauma. The pandemic is obvious a crisis of a virus, but it's also a parallel pandemic of mental health in crisis. And what I'm seeing in my office every day right now is sort of the latest manifestation of the anxiety issues that we've been dealing with for a year. People are afraid to face the new realities of the new normal, even though we've been craving it for a year. It's causing a lot of anxiety, it's causing a lot of fear, and it's causing people to feel very vulnerable. And my message and my piece is this: there is a place for addressing mental health in the doctor's office. Mental health needs to be put into the conversation about whole health, to be developing meaningful health care. Right, so coping is critical, and the first thing is, as you say, we have to name this, we have to call this what it is. It's a trauma. So once we name this experience as a trauma, and we've all been through some sort of trauma in some degree, whether it's losing a loved one to COVID-19 or losing your senior year of high school. We've all experienced some sort of loss.
We were scared. That would be the honest answer. I was in complete shutdown for about 5 weeks. I opened up just before the Mother's Day holiday, which is a huge holiday for a flower shop, so that was really important. I would come into the shop just to do things around the store, just because I felt like I needed to be here. Signed in and watched every 2 p.m., Wine with DeWine, they called it, his press conferences, because the information sounds so scary at the time. You want to make sure you're doing the right thing. A lot of flower shops in Ohio did not close down. I think it was about half and half. I felt like it was the right thing to do in the beginning, and then as time trudged on, I started to get, I guess, a little bit bitter that other shops hadn't and were delivering just like Amazon or pizza delivery, and so I sort of felt like that I was going to reopen and be there at least in time for the Mother's Day holiday, which was good because DeWine actually authorized the businesses to reopen around then. So I think we did the right thing. I think we were considered a non-essential. I do believe that flowers are essential for people's mental well-being, but you don't have to eat them or they're not going to keep you alive. So I get that part of it. I would say it was just scary. You know, the last day before I was here, before that I shut down for those 5 weeks, I had given flowers away, I had cleaned up, I had put all my buckets away, and I cried. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna cry now. It was just scary. You know, you wondered if you'd reopen or if they'd let you, but here we are.
And every day I would take my temperature and enter it in this log. And I noticed it was going up every day. And I couldn't even go see a doctor and get a test, which a lot of people suggested, like friends and family were like, so when are you going to get a test? But the doctors were like the messaging from the hospitals was, don't come here unless you think you're going to be hospitalized. Because at that point, the numbers were getting so high that capacity at the ICUs and emergency rooms was just not there. And for the first week that I didn't go in, I was like trying to convince myself that I wasn't sick. Like I'm fine. Just overreacting. And then I could just go in. And then I'd get up and I'd start to cough, and like I'd realize they weren't going to let me in, so stay home another day. I think at first I didn't let myself realize how scared / kind of depressing it all was. Like pretending that I wasn't sick. And that second week, I just kind of let myself wallow in it. And then I started to get really anxious about sleeping because sleeping was the only thing that made me feel better.
We cook, we serve, bartend, clean, we do all of it. I applied on March 16th, like right after we closed, because within the message that the governor is giving out and the way that the news was covering it was unemployment has been extended and expanded and more people will be able to get it and you should definitely apply. And all the people that I had talked to when I was freaking out were telling me, don't worry about it. The governor expanded unemployment. Just go file and you'll be fine. And then it was immediately kicked back that it was denied. And I started calling, didn't get a response back until hours later. It might have been the next day. After getting all my information, the representative there, the first thing she said to me was like, you're the reason why I'm so frustrated right now. I made $171.25 too little in that quarter to qualify for unemployment.
Well, my wife got it. Took her up to the hospital to quarantine her or whatever. This when they were not letting folks go up there and visit people who tested positive. So I was back home just praying that the Lord would, save my Luma. And a few weeks went by, she just got worse and worse. I just thought, why? I didn't want me to be with my wife while she's going through this. Hell, after a while, I prayed to catch it just to be closer to her. But the good Lord didn't have that in the plans for me. She passed, and it was hard for me and the kids, especially my middle boy. He just turned 32. Him and his mama was close. So they call me and check on me and visit, but they got their own kids, so I don't bug them much. So I tell these kids, I say, y'all run around without your mask on. This virus is real. Real as it gets.
Everybody meet in the gallery. Put your costumes and props away first, and then meet in the gallery for a final meeting.